Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. Well, it's that time of year again when the pumpkins are growing everywhere, the garden has exploded, flowers are blooming, and it's time to think about succession planning and planting for late autumn and winter harvest. I just love this time of year when the pumpkin patch is exploding, so much so that you have to mow around it all and step over it. In this patch here, I've got 3 different types of pumpkin. I've got a Jap pumpkin, a buttercup type pumpkin, and a volunteer, which I'm not really sure what that's going to be. This one here is actually creeping through from my ladder trellis, and that's the huge, big butter pumpkin. So the garden is just exploding with life at the moment, and it's so much fun. The excitement, of course, with a pumpkin patch is you never know what you're going to get and how many pumpkins are hiding in here. You kind of have to really search around to find any. This one here, if you can see that, is one of the little Jap pumpkins. They're shaped a bit like a buttercup pumpkin. There's a more mature one hiding just behind that little one. And just in here, I've found one of the buttercup type varieties that I can show you, and that's just in there. Again, a bit difficult to show. It's kind of squeezed in next to another one of those beautiful Jap pumpkins that's actually quite huge, really. The ladder trellis, which I built during last year, and I'll leave a link to that video, is holding up remarkably well. It's got some very big pumpkins hanging off it. So you can just see in there, that's my hand on it. So you can see it's getting quite huge. There's one there, there's a couple more over the other side, and there's quite a few kind of lower down, hiding in amongst it all. Now, of course, this trellis was never going to really hold up a pumpkin plant of this size, so it is spreading itself out all across my garden. Here is a corn patch. I have started harvesting corn from this patch. And this is my pumpkin plant that's weaving its way through. Small bees busy creating more pumpkins. And hiding in there, I think, is what is the biggest of the butter pumpkins. And that one's actually sitting on the ground, nicely being supported, I think. And it's producing lots more right next to my basil there. Right next to the ladder trellis is this other little mesh trellis that I put up. Now, the Jap pumpkin plant that I've put on there has been very slow making pumpkins, and I hadn't really seen any signs of pumpkins being produced on that until quite recently. And certainly flowers. So all through that trellis, oh, there's a little one. It's a bit hard to find them. I don't know if you can see that one hanging there. There's a little one there that I've just spotted. They've just been a bit slow compared to the butter pumpkin. And I have spotted another little pumpkin in there starting. So it's certainly starting to get going. Between the bean trellis on one side and all these pumpkins on the other, you really can't move around this section of the garden very well. I do actually, when I'm harvesting beans, have to crawl through that space to get the beans on the other side of the trellis. I unfortunately left a seeding Swiss chard to go across there, which was just sort of like a gateway for this pumpkin plant to creep in over my beans and over to the other side. Also in amongst that green jungle are sweet potato vines. They're all growing at the bottom below the beans. The pumpkin look like they might be taking over them a bit, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with the sweet potatoes there. But the garden over the other side has got plenty of sweet potato action, so I don't think we're going to be missing out on a harvest this year. Just here in my former broad bean bed, I planted some painted mountain corn. Now they've come up, some of them didn't come up or they died shortly after, but there's this there's enough there for a decent crop. What I'm going to do today to start off my succession planting is plant some frost beans. Now these are a gorgeous little bean that I do regularly plant along with my corn. I let the corn get going first and then I plant the bean, because the bean can take over it if you plant them at the same time. Trust me, I did it before. So I leave the plants to grow kind of this size before I get my bean seeds in. So I'm just going to plant a few sort of all around the garden, and they can grow up the stalks as the plants are growing. Now what I will have to do is try and push this pumpkin vine back to give space to these corn plants as they grow. I did trim one back and it died back to a point. Well, actually it yellowed off to a point, but then it still kept going pretty well. And that's the one that's taken up and off over the bean trellis. So I'm just chucking a few seeds in each hole. I tend to overplant just as an experiment to see how much I can actually get out of spaces. Sometimes it ends up being a bit chaotic, but it's a bit of fun really pushing your system. Got all those seeds in now, and I've just pulled down a little bit of this sorrel and just popped it down as mulch just to make sure that they're not encroaching on these young corn plants. The next place that I want to get some successional planting done is in this potato bed. I've got a bit of a trellis, you can see it going up there, that's underutilised at the moment, and these potato plants can come out of the ground. So I'm just going to clear the potatoes sort of from one end of this trellis right through so I can get some other beans planted. This is my current lazy housewife bean trellis, and the beans are really pumping. There's lots of them coming on this plant and it is looking quite healthy. Mind you, with a recent hot day, some of the leaves did dry off. Now that's kind of a sign that I use to start some other bean plants in, just to give you a harvest over a longer period. I should be harvesting beans for a few more months yet if I can keep the plants going. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a second row of these beautiful green beans going in this former potato bed. So I'll continue pulling out some potatoes. I made a start a little bit earlier to give some potatoes to a friend. So I'll continue that now and get that garden cleared in the middle. Now these potatoes do have a bit of a scabby appearance to them. They still cook up okay, but I might move the potato bed for next time to a different location and see if we can reduce that happening. I've got this side of the trellis cleared of plants. I'll just leave the plants on the other side because I can just plant the beans all along here and they can grow up here freely, and that will just leave these plants for a little bit longer in the ground. They all look fine. And I've also got these good looking potato plants down this end too, so I'll just leave those ones as well. I'll just clear these potatoes out the way and we can get the beans planted, and then it actually leaves quite a bit of space on this side. I might put some rocket or lettuce or Swiss chard or something in there. Well, you can quickly pull out a huge bucket of potatoes from quite a small section of my potato bed, really. I will have to come back with another bucket and get all the little potatoes that didn't quite fit into my bucket. but that's not a bad problem to have. Now I can get my beans planted next to this trellis. The seeds that I'm planting here today are home-saved seeds from a lazy housewife plant that I noticed was actually producing really long bean pods, much longer than I'm used to. So I actually saved heaps of those seeds so that I could get that same plant happening again. And it actually worked really well. These beans are really quite long and certainly much longer than the original plants. So, if you find some of your plants doing unusual things in good ways, if you nurture those plants and save the seed, you might be able to save that characteristic and propagate it going into the future. Okay, a good water, and we'll have some more beans growing up this in a few weeks' time. Now, while we're down this end of the garden near my potato bed and my Turk's turban pumpkin, which I didn't actually introduce you to, but this plant is amazing. Look at that colour on that pumpkin. Now, it will deepen in orange colour, and I believe this really colours up beautifully as well. Now, this trellis here, which is another one that I built during last year, so check that video out. It is holding up these pumpkins really well. These ones don't have any support and the pumpkins don't look like they're going to be dropping off soon. I do have a problem over this side where a couple of them are caught in the mesh and they were stuck before I realised, so they might have to be cut out. But the pumpkin trellis, this one is going really well. And now we move on to the garden bed that I cleared and built a new trellis in my 7 days of work in the garden. I planted some snow peas, which are getting up, so I can nearly help them up onto this trellis. I did plant some other seeds as well, some beetroot and turnips, and there was something else. But what I found was that this just was a mass of weeds. Because I think I dug into the soil so much, I've exposed a lot of weed seeds that were in the soil and it was just covered. So I've had to weed all of that, and I was pulling out some of the beetroot seedlings as well because it was just covered. So what I'm going to do here is actually just plant out some little seedlings that I've got. The seedlings that I've planted myself aren't really big enough yet, so I did just go and buy some celery seedlings. I haven't planted any celery seeds. Usually I get volunteers in the garden, but they haven't appeared as yet. And these ones are just a cabbage. I will have to be careful and probably cover them over to protect them from the white cabbage moth, but I'll get those into the ground. Now down this end I did save a few little beetroot seedlings, so once I get this garden planted I might just get a little bit more compost around them, really to help them kind of recover a bit. So cabbage is all along this side and I'll put the celery on the other side. Now you might be wondering about what I've done here. I did find blackbirds not only digging up all of this compost and really disrupting a lot of my lettuce seeds, but I found they were also just digging through all the wood chips on the path and just sort of burying all the young seedlings as well. So I've had to cover over that just to stop them doing it. Now what I will put on here is some little row covers to keep the birds off and also the butterflies off. And now I'll get the celery in. Okay, looking good. What I will put over the top of these little plants is some of this cover. That's so that they've got plenty of space, and then I'm going to put this mesh over the top. I'll leave that on just for a few weeks or up until the plants get too large. And that should let them get growing before being decimated by any of those little green caterpillars. Now just to get these little plants watered. Well, a few more seeds in to continue the harvest going into autumn. I find that no-dig gardening really lends itself to succession planting. As one garden bed finishes, you just pull it out, put the seeds straight in without thinking too much about it, just to keep the show on the road. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.